Okay, back again. Episode number 9, Ozonics Killerwinds podcast. I'm Cole Tanner.
I'm Nick Simon.
And we have got I don't know if it gets more of a special guest than today.
About as special as it gets.
We kind of joked, we hyped our first guest, which comparatively to now isn't as awesome. Sorry, Zach.
Yeah.
But today we've got Scott Elrod. Scott is the owner, CEO of Ozonics.
Yep.
Also known as the man, also known as the big guy, also known as the boss.
Yep.
Thanks for being here, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to be here with you guys, and I'm really proud of you, this journey that you're going on here with this podcast. I think you guys have a great deal to be able to share with so many people, so I'm excited for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is an exciting day to have Scott on here, and I think the whole idea of the podcast today is we just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, I think one thing when I got to know Scott, I was really intrigued by was the history of Ozonics. And I think even to this day, we have a video that's on our website and we can probably pull it up right there. Bing. But it's called The Truth About Ozonics. And it talks a little bit about the history and what Scott went through. And so, and I think that's what we kind of want to go through. And just, I think the fun thing too is just to get to know who Scott is. Yep. I think a lot of people don't know who he is. So yeah, Scott, so if you could kind of go into a little bit, I was jotting some stuff down here. It's been almost 20 years since this whole thing started, which is just insane to think about. Because can you kind of explain a little bit of how this all even became an idea? At that dental practice that day, if you can kind of go through that, that'd be really awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes way back to almost 2001, 2002. I had my background. I'm a dentist by profession, and I've always had a background in chemistry. And way back then, I had a very profound interest for some reason in oxidation. So I was even using it in my surgical suites in my practice. And way back when, in regards to the hunting aspect of it, I was using it in one of the surgical suites I was using a laser to get rid of the odor and stuff that was being emitted when we were using the laser. And I realized there was no odor. And matter of fact, there was almost really not much smoke at all either. Some of the vapor come out when you utilize that on tissue. Right. And as I was suturing up the case, I was just literally it was profound, the difference, just from that small distance from where I was working to where I was sitting, that when I wasn't using it, what I was smelling, and then when I was using it, that I literally smelled nothing. Right. And so it's crazy, I mean, I try to stay very focused, obviously, when I'm doing surgeries or whatever I'm doing, and while I'm suturing the case up.
He's like all of a sudden think about a laser and it just like strays over. Yeah. You probably want to stay pretty focused in. Yeah. I don't think I'd be a good dentist. I realize I'm holding a laser? What?
Yeah. And so I was just like, as I was suturing the case up, I started to begin to think to myself, my gosh, I wonder if I could use this deer hunting.
Straight hillbilly. That's what I love. I love that. Just went straight to deer hunting. Yeah. I love that. Oh.
Yeah, and so we went ahead and I started the process of told some guys at my local church a little bit about what had happened. And I worked with some folks in my barn and started the process of making these units that had little wing nuts on them. I'm sure you saw them way back then, Cole. Wing nuts on it, a flip-up lid. The camo on it was a duct tape that was camo
I think
colored.
The battery is the part that I love the best. Wasn't it like a car battery?
It was a motorcycle battery. It was a big battery.
Try not to electrocute yourselves.
And I didn't know how to carry it, so I made that sucker out of duct tape too, the carrying case for the battery. Right. It had a 10-foot cord on it that plugged into the back of the unit. Yeah. And I started playing with it in my barn, and before you know it, I told these guys at my church about it, and I'm like, hey, listen, I got an idea. So we went ahead and put people on the ground. This is in January, after the hunting season was over, so these poor deer had been shot up.
Pressured.
Yada, yada. Exactly. Yeah. And so we put them on the ground in ghillie suits and put mesquite around them and mounted the units up above their head and put in a video camera on a tripod in a small hole, and we just would go downwind of where the wind was going at that time and just start putting corn out basically from their feet, 15, 20 yards out. And I was working the day that the guy started doing the testing, right? And that afternoon, I get this phone call, and it's these guys, these are full grown men. I mean, back in those days, they were late 20s, 30s, and they're like screaming on the phone, going, man, we had deer eaten at our feet. I mean, it was so close, we couldn't back the camera up anymore. And they were just like, we have no idea what's going on. And because they didn't really understand the technology then either. And to be honest with you, I was still wrapping my head around it, and so patented the process. And the one guy that was there, he went ahead and was like, I can't believe this is happening. So one time he was there and he reached up behind him and there was this little push button on it. And he literally pushed the button in gently and let the unit go off. And within probably 3 to 4 minutes, all these deer that were standing, it was like this deer way in the background, probably like 60, 70 yards, stood out there and started barking. And then it's just like in unison, all the deer turned and just stared right at this guy sitting in this cedar brush pile.
Crazy?
Yeah. And we were like, oh my goodness, what just happened? Because it took that much time for the oxidant to break out of the air, right? And we were like, oh my gosh, we got something. And we thought, this is a slam dunk. We're going to come screaming this, and we're going to change the world, right? Matter of fact, basically the first product, the HR, everybody doesn't even know what the HR product was. Is back in those days, we were so confident we were going to flip this industry on its head that we called it the hunting revolution.
Oh,
so it was basically,
that's how what HR stands for. Apart. Funny. Exactly. I didn't even know that. I didn't never know what that stood for. That's funny.
That is awesome.
The hunting revolution.
That's sweet.
I love it.
Yeah. So we were so confident, and little did we know the journey to be able to explain to the public about how an invisible molecule could break down the olfactory code between you and an animal, and it was a journey. And so, so that's it. That's kind of how the beginning of that thing went.
Well, that's even crazy because even to this day, the thing that I key on there is we still tell people, you don't think it works? Shut it off.
Yeah.
Watch what happens. Like, you don't think it works? Shut it off. I'll never forget that. I did that with a thermocell one time. Yeah. I took a thermocell to Ontario black bear hunting, and the guy said, I never used thermocell. I said, they work really good. I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, listen, you don't think it works? Shut it off. And I did. And I tell that to people all the time with Ozonics. You don't think it works? Just shut it off and watch what happens. Because you're going to watch the field clear. You're going to see just white tails running away from you. You know what I mean? It's just so wild. All these years later, it's still the exact same thing. If you don't think it works, shut it off. Yeah, that's crazy. But then, Scott, I think that rolls right into, it's funny because when Ozonics hit the ground, I mean, now Ozonics is so kind of more socially accepted, right? Yeah. Or just accepted from a hunting perspective. Everybody knows it works. It's undetectable. It's undeniable that it works, right? Yep. But the fact of the matter is that that's not what it was like at first. When you can kind of go into what you experienced, all of a sudden going to consumer shows or going to retailers or talking to other manufacturers and just maybe this is too strong a word, maybe it is, but almost you kind of had a war. I mean, it was a battle. For every force, there's an equal and opposite force, and you definitely felt the opposition. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy is that I've tried so hard since even the beginning of the company. I mean, is to always kind of stand in the background, right? There's a lot of guys out there really are a little bit better looking than I am, a little bit more articulate than I am.
My wife always says that I have a face for radio, so that's my problem. I'm like, wait a second. Yeah, she calls me Handsome Dan. I'm like, from Wayne's World. I'm like, you're not handsome, Dan. You're not so handsome. But yeah.
Yeah, and so, I tried so hard to stay out of it, but I was slowly but surely behind the scenes dragged into so much because we thought once we could kind of show the end users basically the power of oxidation, it would be so readily accepted. But little did we know that the whole process of scent control in the consumer's eyes was so diluted in the sense of its messaging of 360 just hunting, all this stuff that they were fed, and then just the disbelief and the mistrust. We had the barrier to entry was so huge, and now we couldn't even show it because a spray, you can see a spray coming out. A clothing, you can see a clothing. You can see these things. Ours is, we got this molecule that you, by the way, you can't see. Oh, it's naturally occurring.
You can smell it out of the unit, but it eliminates odor, and it's like it just doesn't all make sense.
Yeah, exactly. And so the journey of it initially was very challenging. And, everybody was making comments about, everything from safety. And so we proved safety beyond a doubt, right? We went ahead and then we said, it didn't work. Well, then that got proven beyond a doubt. And that got proven beyond the doubt for something I thought that was going to really put a nail in my coffin, and that was the whole issue with the government.
Yeah,
right?
This is the mind-blowing thing for me. The hunting industry, whatever you want to call it, the hunting community, hunting industry, all these people are saying ozone doesn't work, and then you've got the U.S. government calling Scott, tell this story. This is this. Honestly, that gives me goosebumps. This is absolutely insane.
Yeah, so that during that period of time, they were, the industry was trying so hard to blacken us up in the sense that they didn't want us to come in to the marketplace. And so it was an all-out press to do everything they could to stop us, right? And then behind the scenes, I couldn't say anything because we were working with the government because we were, to some degree, kind of named a national security risk, right? And so, Fox News printed out an article and it's still posted today. And I thought by now they'd have that down, but basically it says that Ozonics is the best choice for, bad people of all sorts. And so we started getting all these notifications. So we had the opportunity to get to work with the government some. And, during that time, there were some times in my shower that I just was heartbroken. I thought why are they doing this to me? And I tried so hard to inform them, our own government, about what could be. And then when this was happening, it was basically almost bankrupting me. And, we basically got some good folks within the government, great people that came in pure of heart, and they really worked with us, and we were able to help get solution sets for them and started to get our IP released, which I'm still very grateful for those people in that system for working with us after they knew what our true intentions were. And, but during that time here, they were talking about how effective we were. And all the different journeys that I made with them. And the industry was saying we didn't. And so I couldn't say anything at that time, though. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't make it public about what we were doing. And so, long story short, God kind of had his hand on that one, able to walk us through it. And, basically then 2012, that time period, we went through that journey of about 3-4 years. And then we got freedom. And then the same people who said we didn't work and that we were harmful, now our next battle was everybody trying to steal the technology. And so ended up in court constantly or dealing with attorneys trying to keep people out. So it's crazy. The same people who were, different roadblocks were being created. Now we're having to deal with a bunch of different folks in litigation to kind of impede them. And so whoever thinks creating something from ground zero, from an idea and a piece of paper and in your garage to live in the American dream, they just don't fully understand the true path.
Well, and I'll tell you what, that's the thing. That's the thing is, like I said, I've been at Ozonics since August 15th of 2016. I'll never probably ever forget that date. But I'll tell you one thing that, we don't talk a lot about, and Scott doesn't talk a lot about is, I have a ton of respect and admiration for Scott as a man, right? To build something from scratch. I mean, you talk about the American dream, like this is a small company. There's just a handful of us. Yeah. You know what I mean? And Scott, he owns it, he runs it, and it's been tough. Like when he first started it, everybody's saying this doesn't work. The government's saying it works too well. Yeah. And then all the people that said it didn't work, then they all tried to just steal the idea. Yeah. And then he had to litigate. And I have some friends that are lawyers, but the reality is when there's lawyers involved, the only people that make money is the lawyers. You know what I mean? So then then it costs you, I don't even want to know how much, right? And it was just this constant, like one battle after the next. And Scott just kept on plowing the field.
Yep.
You know, like I just think it's so awesome. And I think for me, that's one of the things that I've just really enjoyed is being a part of a small business and having just something that is so far reaching and has made such a difference for people.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like I said, Scott, I really commend you for what you've gone through. And like you said, it's funny, like Nick and I, sometimes we only think in days, weeks, months. He spent 3+ years just going round and round with the government.
Yeah.
Then how many years going round and round in litigation with other companies trying to, steal the things that he worked so hard and created, you know what I mean? The IP and the patents that he was granted. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I just think it's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, at the end of the day, you can try to pat yourself on the back. And there's, the people who gave up a great price was my family, right? For kind of tolerating, because I mean, it's a choice, right? And so my family, gave up a great deal as we went through that process because it was very hard. I mean, there's a lot of people who were encouraging me to sell or quit. And, it was just one of those things. I felt like it was a journey I was meant to go on. So, and I'm grateful for it. I mean, I've learned a lot and I think it's been a great journey and I'm still enjoying it greatly. But it was also the people in the company, you and everybody else, because you don't get the opportunity to, go through those journeys in hindsight, in those challenges and the things that went right and the things that really went wrong. And, to be able to go through it, if you don't have great people, behind you, to the side of you, in front of you, everybody pushing in unison, that's what enables things like this to be successful.
Yeah,
and so it's really the team you create. And we have a beautiful, small, beautiful team.
Yeah. So, and I can attest to that too, moving from Wisconsin down to here, it's been amazing. Like everyone here is just so nice. They welcome me with open arms and it's been nothing but a dream since I came down here. It's just feels like a family down here. And so what you said there about building an awesome team, it's 100% true. It's amazing.
Well, and it was funny for me, like when Nick first started, he was going to, work in Wisconsin, and it was going to be kind of we were going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And then you came down and I was kind of like, I think you need to see the office,
Yeah.
And then it was like, you came in like the one day, like I think went out for lunch with Susie and I kind of sat in and talked to everybody. And it was like, we were the first day out at the Iowa Deer Classic. You're like, yeah, I'm moving to Iowa. It was just so funny.
Yeah.
And I was trying to I just wanted to let it be how it was going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you, and I tried to be like a dad. I'm like, are you sure that's what you want to do? Like, no, man, I just didn't realize like it's like a little family there. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's only just like a part of us, you know?
As I'm heading back to Wisconsin, I'm calling my buddies, my parents, my Uncle Zip. I'm like, I think I'm moving back to Iowa.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and I think the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, Scott, is, the one thing that I feel like is, the resounding theme, like you just mentioned, is building Ozonics into what it is now. But I think the other thing that I know about you is obviously there's a passion for hunting. You know what I mean? Like, you were describing that first time when those guys are going out there. And I know you've told me stories about pouring the corn around a ground blind with pigs all around it. And even how I got to know you, and your passion for elk hunting and things like that. So Scott, if you could just kind of talk a little bit about just your passion for hunting and passion for the outdoors, and even like how you grew up. I mean, I know you grew up a good section of time in Alaska, grew up with a couple brothers and a dad that were passionate outdoorsmen. If you can kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always grown up in the outdoors, hugely impacted by obviously my family and my grandfather, who just dragged his pictures of me out there, 5, 6 years old, walking around with my grandfather, hunting and stuff. And so, I mean, I've always had a deep passion for, primarily hunting. I enjoy fishing, but, at the end of the day, hunting is kind of, I guess, the one thing that if there's anything that keeps me up at night, it's getting to go hunting. And, it's crazy because over the years, I remember when I was in my 20s and 30s, hunting just literally consumed me. And just, over the years, the whole process of hunting and, harvesting animals, the actual process of killing something isn't the same for me anymore right now. I mean, I harvest them because at the end of the day, I love the protein,
Yeah.
right? My family loves it, right? And I love, I guess, if I think about it, like the camaraderie, right? I can't tell you how many times just, getting out and getting to go hunting in the mornings and the evenings and the laughter and the kind of razzing and just the opportunity to have the camaraderie that comes along with hunting and just the pure challenges that sometimes comes, right? Sitting in a tent up in Alaska and it's blowing and raining and snowing and everything's wet and you kind of look at your buddy and you just kind of smile at each other as you kind of embrace the suck and just deal with it. And the memories that are created with those things, and I think at the end of the day, my wife always says, I know you dread going because you're afraid of leaving. There's never a good time to leave the businesses of the family, but it seems like I always come back a better person.
Right, absolutely.
And so, hunting has always been a part of my life. And, I'm just blessed to have great people in it that I get to go on those adventures with. And so,
well, and to talk about one of the guys that you go on those adventures with, Buddy, the president of the company, he's been involved, pretty near from the very beginning. If you can kind of talk a little bit about your relationship with Buddy and how you guys just really enjoy, the hunting adventures that you guys go on even to this day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tell you, Buddy's been an integral part of my life, going back to almost 2004. Right. And so he was one of the first ones that I ever shared the idea with. Right. And, over the years, there's been a lot of people who've, kind of come into my life and it's just a lot of them over the years fade out. Right. And Buddy's always been that constant. And so it's crazy because when things are good, it's not hard to keep people around you. But when you're going through lawsuits and you have the federal government sitting out in your reception room and, it's just, it's real easy to say there's so many easier things that I could be doing in life than this. And Buddy's one of those guys that, just a real disciplined human being, doesn't really have a real big sense of quit in him. And I think that's the one thing about it is that when you do these types of things is that it's real easy to embrace the things that are just so right, right? What you got to focus on sometimes is that when things go right, you need to embrace it and smile. But when things go wrong, you need to smile, embrace it, learn from it, and keep moving. And he's one person that I know that just doesn't quit, right? And so he's made life a lot easier.
Absolutely. For me. Yeah, no, like I said, Buddy's my direct boss, and it's awesome to get to work with him. And like you said, it's always fun as the years have kind of clicked by. I know it's kind of funny because Buddy he seems like he's always had a real passion for whitetail hunting, right? He really loves whitetails. And Scott's sweet tooth is elk hunting. But here lately, all of a sudden, I feel like I'm starting to see how Buddy's sweet tooth is kind of all of a sudden going over to the dark side. He just like, he's every time if we talk hunting, he's talking elk hunting now all of a sudden.
Well, let me tell you, whitetail hunting, it's not that I don't enjoy whitetail. I've been whitetail hunting since I think the first one I ever harvested the bow, I was 14 years old in a tree with no stand, no quiver, standing up in a tree next to the golf course, over by our house. Awesome. I don't even know if I was legitly being hunting there. And after I shot it, I couldn't get it out. So my little brother and I dragged it out with this guy's lawnmower that we got out of the shed.
Where's the camera when you need one? Come on.
No, I'm telling you. I mean, I've been doing that. And it was the greatest experience because when I told him back then, about me getting the deer, he looked at me. He's like, no way. Right. And those were old Pro-Line bow and arrows. They were wood compound bows. Right. And I don't know how my parents allowed us to take arrows with broadheads up in a tree and straddle a branch. And so we didn't have rangefinders back then. And so we'd practice at a certain distance. So he'd pace ways away from the tree and put his hat down. I'd shoot his hat.
That's too funny.
To see how close I was, right? And so, but we got it. We thought it was a doe, and we just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. We both sat over that thing and just petted it forever. It was, So, I've been doing whitetail hunting forever. But it's still one of these things, still to this day, I can go whitetail hunting and be standing up in a tree and draw back on a doe. And I literally can look down at my watch where my pulse is, and my pulse could be like 110. And so it's just, I still have to just, even though I've been doing it forever, I still have to reel in that pulse a little bit. And, so I mean, whitetail hunting, I still enjoy deer hunting profoundly. I mean, I still enjoy doing it, but it's just right now between family and the practice and the ozonics and everything that's going on, I got to pick and choose what I bite into time wise. And, and I can only, get so many whitetails, and, I just love the adventure of chasing elk. And, it's not like I get to do it 10 times a year. I'm lucky if I get to sneak out there once or twice a year. And, I do love it. And I love the camaraderie. I mean, that's a great thing about it, is at night we get to sit around and look at each other's blisters and compare and just, so it's so
I'll tell you what, blisters, heck, it was a second fall that I was working for Ozonics. Scott and Buddy were going to be in the Gila elk hunting with a buddy of mine named Mike Brazil. And I show up there from the airport, and there's Scott with his buddy's finger across the table, and Scott's putting stitches in his finger. Buddy cut his finger with a broadhead on accident. There's Scott stitching him up at the table. I'm like, what is going on here? That was the craziest thing.
Well, what's crazy is it. By the way, brother, it wasn't a broadhead.
Oh, it wasn't? Okay, I thought it was a broadhead.
It was a knife.
Oh, it was a knife? Okay, my bad, sorry.
He got this new knife, and he was so excited to show me. He goes, "You got to see this." And so I'm like, "Okay, just give me a second." We weren't even there 10 minutes. And all of a sudden I hear this, "Oh, crap." And I look over at him, and he's like bent over, and blood's just dripping on the floor. And I'm like, "Oh, no." And so we hadn't even gotten our bows out of the case.
Already drawn blood on the hunt. Yeah, right there. No, and that's actually that's actually kind of a funny segue how I met Scott. I haven't actually ever talked about it in public. So I'll have to give a little bit of the PG-13 version, but so I actually met Scott on an elk hunt. Geez, I don't even know what year it was, but he was elk hunting in Colorado. I was working for an outfitter in Colorado, and Scott came on this elk hunt. Well, when I used to guide elk hunters, I always had two rules. Don't guide the guide, right? You came on a guided hunt, and don't walk like an elephant, right? And so don't guide the guide basically means, like I said, you're coming on an elk hunt, like we kind of have a way that we're going to try to do things, and, not that we don't take suggestions and things like that, but you just kind of, we're just like, hey, this is how we want to try. This is going to be the best way, the most effective way to try to get you an elk. So like right off the bat, Scott comes and he has these Ozonics and stuff, and we're talking about them. And I had heard about Ozonics. This was when I first heard about Ozonics, like the HR 200. I had a couple guys that I knew in Iowa that had used them before and stuff. But he's like, and I said, listen, we're going to be kind of running and gunning and, elk hunting. I knew we'd elk hunted before, but it's kind of a cat and mouse game, and we got to be careful because we don't have 1 million acres here. So we don't want to bump elk off, and stuff. And he's like, and we really play the wind and this and that. He's like, well, I don't really want to do it that way. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm trying to be like accommodating. And he's like, and I was like, well, there's just like, we're only going to do this. And he's like, well, I don't really want to like worry about the wind. I just want to like go right at him. And I'm like, well, Scott, you're like breaking rule number 1. You know what I mean? I'm like, don't guide the guide, And so like, he's adamant about this, right? And if you know anything about Scott, when he gets his mind made up, you better watch out, right? So I actually had to go to like my boss, and I'm like, hey, he wants to like not do things the way we do things. So what we came up with is we had this spot, we called it the windmill spot. And it was like this spot was on this little water hole, and, there would always be elk in there, but we couldn't hunt it in the afternoons. Like you just couldn't. It was just wrong for the wind. And he's like, we'll put him in there. And there was a spot, I've told you this, but there's a spot like up on this hill that we didn't tell the clients about, but we could watch.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, over the years, you kind of get to where you start counting guys' arrows because, you walk out there with 6 arrows, they only come back with 5, and they say they didn't see anything. Well, what happened to your 6th arrow, But I set up on this hill to watch him, and sure enough, like the wind was completely wrong. Right at dark, here comes, this herd of elk, a bull, some cows. They walked right into the water hole, and I mean, I was flabbergasted. I'm like, geez. So, and then the next day I'm like, okay, fine. I believe you. Let's do it. Like, let's just go right at him. So we were hunting in this big valley, ponderosas on both sides. This bull walks out and wind was going right at him. I mean, just right at him. He came across this valley. We were just tucking trees. He came all the way across, directly downwind the whole time. And I'm like, what the heck? He came across, got far enough. He was probably, like 80 yards away when he came closest, and he could tell that he should have been able to see what he was hearing. Didn't like it, turned and kind of walked back the way he came. So when I look at Scott, I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's go. We go get in my truck. We go up this road. I'm like, he's going up through here. We're going to get around. We're going to cut him off. It's going to be perfect. And if you don't know anything about me, when I get excited, you better watch out. I get pretty excited. So we're like freaking out. I'm getting up there. We park the truck, get out. I've got this Montana decoy, this flat cow decoy. I'm like, we're going to walk down through here. There's a fence that he's got to cross and he's got to come up this way. And Scott's ready to rock, right? He's just game face. He's like, yeah, let's do this. I'm like, okay, sweet. So we get down there, and I think I called, I heard him bugle, so we kind of moved in position. And at that time, the wind we were upwind, so it was perfect. I was like, okay, here we go. He gets to this fence. I'm holding the decoy. He sees the decoy. He kind of gets up to the fence, like he comes over that fence. It's on. He jumps the fence. I'm like, oh, well, I've got Scott right behind me. Okay, he's like right behind me. And I can glance over my shoulder and Scott's all ready to go, and I'm like, heck yeah. I'm holding up the decoy, and the bull comes out. He's like 40, 30, 20, or like 30 to 20. And I'm looking, I'm like, okay, draw your bow. And Scott's like, no. And I'm like, and it was funny because it didn't really register at first. And then I was like, okay. And I was like, I didn't know if he didn't feel comfortable or whatever. I'm like, and the bull's coming even closer. Now he's at 20. And I'm like, draw your bow. And he's like, he tells me no again. Well, now the bull is like, they're just kind of walking. They're kind of weaving through the branches. And all of a sudden he's just like, bonk. And he's just looking right at us. And I'm like, draw. He's like, no. He tells me no a third time. Well, finally the bull, like he'd had enough, Well, hindsight being 2020, Scott would have had to drawn right into my back, right? He would have had to draw the bow. I thought he was off the side where he could have drawn and then kind of come, but he couldn't. He would have drawn right at me. Well, I didn't care. I was like, do it. You know what I mean? Like, that'd be the coolest way to die. You know what I mean? I was like, draw the bow. So the bull finally busts out of there. Well, dude, I came unglued. So the rules for the client were, I always said, don't guide the guide, don't walk like an elephant. Well, the rules when you're guiding is you're never lost, you're never scared, and it's always your fault. Okay, that's the rules. Well, dude, I take this decoy, I slam it on the ground, I looked at Scott, and I just started cussing him up and down. I'm like, what'd I tell you? And I'm yelling, like, what'd I tell you to draw your bow? Draw your bow. I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm like saying the F word, and it was just bad. I'm like, let's go. And I just like start marching back to the truck. I'm like marching back, and I'm just seeing red, and like Scott kind of just, I could see his face like, whoa, you know what I mean? And I get like halfway back to the truck, and all of a sudden like the red goes away, and I'm like, oh crap. Like, what did I just do? And I'm walking back thinking, dude, I'm going to lose my job. You know what I mean? So we get back to the truck, and I look back one time, and Scott's just kind of walking along, like back behind me a ways. I'm like, crap. We get back to my truck. We put our stuff away, and I'm not saying a word. We get in the truck, and I like close the doors. I turn it on. I'm like, hey, listen, Scott, I'm really sorry. Like, that is not what you're supposed to do. Like, you're totally fine. Like, I understand why you didn't draw. Like, I'm really sorry. Scott just sits there for a second. He's like, that's okay. But, normally, people don't talk to me that way. I'm like, I bet not. You know what I mean? And knowing Scott now, I would never do that. You know what I mean? But I felt like that kind of solidified our friendship. You know what I mean? And the crazier part even of that story is the fact that, we get to talking about Ozonics, right, on the hunt, right? And then he was there for a few more days, and we had some really close encounters. And I asked him, I said, well, where's Ozonics at, where you guys just? I'm like, he's like, because I knew Scott was from Texas. He's like, well, our manufacturing's actually in our offices it's in Iowa. I'm like, no kidding. I'm like, where at in Iowa? Oh, it's a small, it's, North Iowa. I'm like, I'm from North Iowa. Like, where at North Iowa? Here, come find out, at that time it was in Clear Lake, Iowa. I was living in Clear Lake. I was living in Clear Lake. It was in Clear Lake the whole time. I never even knew it. You know what I mean? I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. It was right there, Clear Lake, Mesa City. So here, Ozonics was right there the whole time. I never even knew.
Jeez.
So yeah, it was just it just felt like it was kind of meant to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that was a trip to remember. we had a bunch. You know, the crazy thing is that we had just so many wild experiences though. You know, with elk, right? It's just kind of like, you know, sometimes I didn't have a deer tag, but sometimes we'd sit there and we just watch these deer and we just kind of purposely kind of get ourselves in position to kind of let the mule deer down. They're kind of like, they should be smelling us from here. And then we'd parallel them a little bit more. They should be smelling us from here. Yeah, just nothing. And it was, for me, it wasn't necessarily trying to prove to Cole or anybody, but for me, I was just trying to find out what are the limitations of what I'm dealing with. And so here he was just trying to get me an elk. And he thinks I'm trying to Jake everything up. But I'm glad for the sake of your bride and your kids, though, Cole. I did
yeah. That we only had one at that time. Yeah. We had one at a time. I think Tay might have been pregnant with Bo, but that was what was funny about that too. You know, at that time, that was pre the Kinetic Pack. He had HR 200s. And he had gear ties, like rubberized wire ties that I still use those. Yeah. And he was having us gear tie them onto our backpacks, you know? And he was like, he's like, well, you know, we're trying to figure out a way to use this in a mobile way. And I mean, it was way over my head, you know?
Yeah.
But then the funny thing is by the end of that trip, I'm like, there is no way you're taking these things with you. I'm like, I'll wrestle you for them, you know? And that was the thing for me as a guide is my job always was to try to get a client an opportunity.
Yep.
And when I saw Ozonics work on that elk hunt, that's what it meant for me. I looked at that as a way to get clients more opportunity and maximize that opportunity. Because the reality is that, if they can see you, if they can hear you, those things can sometimes trick them, but their nose doesn't lie.
Yeah.
They're going to circle downwind, especially elk, mule deer, black bears, whitetails. They circle downwind. And that's when they get you. Yeah. And that's where Ozonics just became such a powerful tool for me as a guide. And I got a lot of flack. We had clients come in and I didn't have gear ties. I used baling wire. You know what I mean? We would just bale wire them to our backpacks and we just walk with them in. And I'm telling you, it was crazy how well it works. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was quite the journey. That's
the other one story about that elk hunt that I got to tell. So we had some pretty crazy experiences. That was like, it was funny because sometimes on an elk hunt, you only have one opportunity, right? Like you're kind of hoping for one opportunity. Scott had like 5 opportunities. It was like, you know, so this other time we were out in the high desert, we called it. And there was this road that went down in this big low spot. There was a river down there and this big low spot. So we walk out to the edge and sure enough, here's this bull out across the flat. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, and I know Scott wanted a good bull. And I'm like, Scott, it's just kind of like right on the edge. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like, I can call at it and get a little closer, get a better look. I'm like, I don't think it's not a giant, you know? And he's like, well, let's try, you know, let's just see. So I cow call at it. That bull just like turns and looks. And it was just like, he's like running full speed across the thing. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, telling Scott, I'm like, we make a decision like right now. And Scott's like, and it kind of comes in, it starts to trot and it kind of stops and we're looking at it. Scott's like, I don't think so, you know? And I'm like, nope, I get it. So, but it didn't want to stop. So it kind of comes up the way a little farther. And then finally I just didn't stop. I stopped calling. It starts to walk away. Well, it started to walk away. Well, when they walk away, they always look ginormous. Scott's like, well, you know what? That actually looks pretty good. Can you call it back? I'm like, what? So yeah, sure enough. So I'm like, well, I guess we could try. So I just threw the kitchen sink at it. I mean, I was like about ready to light my call on fire, you know? And sure enough, that bull came all the way back in and you were against like a juniper or some sort of big bush. And he was on one side, the bull came around the other side and it just didn't work out. But it was just so funny. He came all the way in, walked off. Can you call back? I'm like, geez, I don't know, maybe. So I kind of felt like Scott maybe thought I was a pretty good elk caller that day. You know what I mean? It usually doesn't work out that way, but it was pretty crazy. That whole trip was just one encounter after another.
Yeah, well, that's all lesson about elk hunting like that. I wasn't sitting next to the juniper tree. I think I really wanted to cover myself, so I went in the juniper tree. So it was like I took away a lot of my options.
Exactly.
But no, that was a great experience and a great time out there.
Well, and I think that's to kind of switch gears on you. And we were talking about this before, and as I'm kind of go back to, just talking about Ozonics as a whole, I think that's one thing, that I got to see as a guide, and I got to see it work. And I think that's one thing that's really fun for me. And I think this is what keeps Scott going too. And I think all of us going is I really believe, and hang my hat on the idea that Ozonics really helps people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you talked about that earlier, Scott, like in like your, the history and what you've kind of gone through, there is such a misbelief and a distrust in scent control. And I'm no different. You know what I mean? Like I did all of it before. I did sprays, suits, cover scents, shampoos, conditioners, washed my clothes a certain way, only wore certain stuff out there, sprayed down at the truck, sprayed down at the tree. And when I would get deer on the downwind side, they'd wind me.
Yep.
It didn't matter. You know what I mean? If I gave an inch or a mile, I was still giving. And that when I was out in Colorado and saw it work, and then I got to bring an Ozonics back to Iowa, I'll never forget that first fall. I had a big mature doe that came in, and I'm like, okay, all right, Scott, here we go. Let's see this thing really working. Let's really see. Dude, it came in directly downwind, didn't even lift, just walked right through. Didn't stop, didn't do the head bob dance, didn't flick her tail, just walked right through. Yep. And I think that's what we hear every day from customers, that it really helps them get closer to animals, and it just gives them more opportunity. And I think that's really what I think motivates me, is that it just really, really helps people.
Yeah. And
I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And like you hear that a lot at the shows, the consumer shows. Yep. And that was really cool for me to experience, being a new employee here and whatnot, and just seeing the tons of people come into our booth and just tell us the exact same story.
Yeah.
But obviously in different places, but everyone had the exact same experience. So that was super cool to experience that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you too, Scott, and this refers to Ozonics, but this just refers to just hunting as a whole. And especially, what do you feel like are some of the big changes that you feel like you've seen in the last couple of decades as you've, pioneered this, scent elimination category? What do you feel like that you've seen change kind of for the better or for the worse, like in hunting? What would you say that are some big things that you've just seen change over the last couple, like I said, last 20 years?
Well, I think it's been, kind of an evolution of things up and down. I mean, I remember growing up as, just harvesting a good deer was going to be great. And then it seems like it kind of went all the way into this big scoring thing, be able to score your deer on the hoof. Is it a 130? Is it a 170? What is it? Right. And, so many of the younger hunters, when I've been out there going, I'm not a kid here. In a few years, I'm going to be 60s. I go out with some of these young guys in their 20s or 30s, and like, I'm going to hold out till I see at least a 160 or something. And I'm like, man, I said, in my lifetime, I've done this a long time. I've killed a fair number of them, but they're not around everywhere, right? It's just, it's not as easy as you think that is. And you may be, and they're like, it's okay if I eat my tag. And I'm like, well, then at the end of the day, what are you really hunting for, right? I mean, for me, I hunt for, I love to make the jerky and watch my kids' face, when they were growing up, get to tear into that, back in those days it came with butcher paper, and just tearing into all all the jerky and just enjoy eating all the stuff that we were getting. And so, we were really back in the days of the Fitzgeralds and this and that. I mean, now I'm really dating myself. Is, just their whole concept about what hunting was really all about. And, my biggest thing is that I want people to go out there and to be able to utilize the technology to kind of fulfill whatever they're wishing for it to be. If they have a 160, a 180, a 200 plus on their property, and they want, they don't want to put everything in their favor to get an opportunity, but more importantly, to give themselves multiple opportunities, maybe at that deer without pushing it off, then we're the right product for them, right? Or if it's for that guy that's taking his kids out and he just wants to give them an opportunity. When you have, for me, I had 3 little girls in my little cloth blind trying to take them out hunting. I mean, you can just imagine
Right.
that, the noise and the odor, just kind of trying to control all that, of trying to make that opportunity happen. Right. And so, I think the world of hunting, we got to be careful, right? Because if we don't kind of reignite the passion of what hunting is about with our kids and with friends that have never been exposed to it, this beautiful outdoor activity that offers so much to so many, it's going to go to sleep on us,
Amen
right?
to that.
And we need to ignite that passion, put down the cell phones, put down the video games, and get out there and literally make eye contact and hold and hang on to our kids. I mean, now I have grandchildren, and just having the opportunity to be able to sit with them and talk with them out in the blind and just be able to, hey, I just embrace that time, right? And so I hope hunting, I'm not going to kid you, right? I mean, I've never, for me, I've killed a fair number of bulls in my life, but I've never killed any monster bulls, right? Do I have a dream of somewhere to do it? I mean, I'm 57 years old and I'm getting to go again this fall, and I'm excited about maybe getting to go potentially get a big one. But I'm not, a 360 or greater. But I tell you, 340 comes on in there, and my heart's pounding out of my chest. A 140, 160 comes out when I'm out there hunting or a doe. I mean, my heart's pounding out of my chest. I can't imagine what that's going to do for my grandson and my grandchildren when I get the opportunity to do that with them. And so we need to awaken you two and all the other people out there that are involved in hunting about the passion of why we do it and what's it all about. And that's what my prayer is. I hope that we don't lose this beautiful gift that we've been given and be able to share it with folks around us.
Well, and I think it's interesting you say that because we actually, one of the podcasts we did, just here previously, it was about why we hunt. And there's it's been talked about a lot, but there's the 5 stages of hunting. There's the shooter stage, which you just want to try to get one. There's the limit out stage where it becomes about shooting as many as you can, limiting out. There's the trophy stage where it becomes more about a mature animal or a number. There's the method stage, less about what you're doing and more about how you're doing it.
Yep.
And then the sportsman stage, where it becomes more about the camaraderie of everything. Yeah. And I think that discussion we had on I think about that all the time. Yeah. And even as you're talking, I'm thinking about that because I feel like Scott, hearing you explain all that, it feels like Scott is really in the sportsman stage.
Yep.
But I think you bring up such a great point that, and I kind of stand on my soapbox when I say this, but I feel like in this whole hunting thing right now, there's a lot of people that are in that trophy stage or the method stage. But instead of being open-minded, we can unintentionally become very narrow-minded, right? Where all of a sudden we're like, this is the way you have to do it. If you don't do it my way, then, whatever, Yep. And instead of being like, let's all stick together. Let's all appreciate and respect what we're all doing, because if we don't wake up and smell the coffee, not only for ourselves, but young people just aren't going to do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like my wife and I have 5 kids, and Jet, my little boy Jet, he's 6. He seriously believes that McDonald's hamburgers are moose meat, because that's what I tell him. You know what I mean? But he believes it. But my funny thing is so like our kids are like outside a lot and constantly dirty, but they'll have little friends come over, and it's funny how many kids bring iPads. Yeah. And I'm like, and I joke with them, I'm like, no iPads in the house. They're like, what? I'm like, just put your iPad away, man. Like, go out and climb. See that tree? I've got literally like the branch is cut so you can climb it. Like, you're not going to fall. It's fine. You're flexible, you know? But it's just kind of, unfortunately, that's going away. And I think sometimes it's because we all kind of get stuck in our groove of the trophy stage or the method stage. And, I think that sportsman stage is important, but if we would just be open-minded all the way through it, I think that keeps everything moving forward. Yep, exactly. Because, I've heard some crazy things about how, we were talking about hunting here, but even in the fishing industry, that, the fishing industry is down. You know what I mean? That you go into some of these stores and they don't have the big fishing departments like they used to.
Yeah.
There's just not as many people fishing. You know what I mean? And so, you hear, I mean, there's a lot of awesome organizations, a lot of awesome things happening in hunting right now. But then in the same regard, like I only know a handful of guys my age that are taking their kids hunting.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not a lot of them hunt. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I just think, I'm right with you, Scott, that I think we all have to stick together and appreciate and respect what we're all doing and kind of understand where you're at within that spectrum and help people along. I mean, even for you and I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You haven't done much turkey hunting, right?
Yeah.
So I was, no pun intended, but was all about kind of taking under my wing this spring and, hey, let's do some turkey hunting.
Yeah.
And I just think that's super, super important.
Yeah. Without a doubt. And it's like, we've kind of talked about this quite a bit, but it's like, try something new to, get that more open mindset.
Absolutely.
And whatnot, because it can be really good for you. Trying something new in everyday life is great for you.
Absolutely.
And so in hunting, it's going to be even better. And like you said, the turkey hunting, now I'm full blown fired up for next spring. You know what I mean? Like, so just, if you get a chance to try something new and open your mind up a little bit, it's so good for you and healthy for you. And, you should push every hunter to do that.
Yeah.
So.
That's where I think, again, Ozonics becomes such a huge thing. I mean, how many times did we have people come at every year? We have dads walk up with little kids at the shows.
Yeah.
And I've really I've said this a lot this year about, minimizing pressure, maximizing opportunity.
Yeah.
I am very fortunate and blessed that I get to hunt in Iowa.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of days of the season and I don't really feel the pressure. All of a sudden when it's youth season and I'm trying to take Jet out there and get him a deer, I definitely feel the pressure.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I am, and that's where I feel like I can lean on my Ozonics, you know what I mean? To be able to help me and try to maximize that opportunity.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to like, if, somebody's got a 5-day hunt in Iowa or something,
Yeah. I mean,
it's a very short time span.
Yes. I mean, heck, look at Scott. He's going to Montana.
Yeah.
What do you guys, you've got the 5th, 15th through the 19th. You've got 5 days.
Yeah.
5 days to get it done.
Yep.
The season's 30 some days long, but you can't, I mean, just like he said, he's got the dental practice, he's got Ozonics, he's got Ruthie, his wife, he's got 3 daughters, he's got grandkids. It just all adds up. It's hard to pull away.
Yep.
And so you're trying to maximize those 5 days.
Yep.
And I think too, it's just the other thing about hunting is that, you put me in a normal situation of life. I try to get to bed by 10. I'm usually up by 4:30 and up and going, do my thing, have my meetings with you guys in the morning, run to the office, have a 7:40 meeting, start seeing clients at 8, go through, meet with you guys intermittently during the day, off at 5, meetings start at 5. Sometimes I don't get done till, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So life is this perpetual motion, whether you're doing what I'm doing or you working the same schedule and you're going to soccer practices, going to games on the weekends. Yep. It's time, go, go, go. And it's when you get the opportunity to go out there and put those boots on and grab that bow or that rifle, whatever you're doing, and go sit in that blind and put your head back and everything just gets quiet, right? And you get the opportunity to kind of watch that raccoon and that squirrel and just kind of hear it, just get the opportunity to kind of hit the reset button. It's sort of like when I'm hunting, I didn't realize how much sleep I was missing, right? Because when I come back after being a day out there in the woods and a little bit of laughter, how well I sleep, right? And in the real world, your brain, even when you're trying to sleep, is running. And so, I encourage people to get out there and enjoy it, right? Get out there and enjoy it. And for themselves, for their own mental health and physical health, but, for their family, take that time with those kids where you get to talk with them, on the way out to where you're going, on the way back while you're out in the blind. It's such powerful time because that's the one thing you're not going to get to buy back. And so, I just highly encourage it to everybody.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm going to completely switch gears on you, Scott. So the $1 million question is, what bow are you shooting for this fall? What are you taking to Montana? What are you narrowing it down to?
I don't know.
See, I knew I was going to get him because the one thing about Scott, and I'm kind of razzing you here, Scott. Scott's a tinkerer. He likes to tinker. Scott's he just likes. It's like he that's where Scott and I are kind of different. I get something working and I go, if it's not broke, why fix it? Right? Scott goes, I could probably make it better. You know what I mean? So he's always trying to do a little something to just get the edge.
Yeah, no, I tell you, that's part. That's part of
absolutely.
it, right? I mean, I'm all for rifle hunting. Anything outdoors, I'm for. But I am an avid bow hunter, archer.
Yeah.
I love it. Right? Matter of fact, I'm down here in Texas, Houston. It's hot and humid. And so I really can't shoot outside that well. So I've got these windows where I open them up in my living room, and I have targets that go from 30 to 90 down the back by a pasture, and that's where I shoot because I can put my coffee down or
enjoy
my water
the AC
down,
bit,
and I shoot in there, open up the windows. My poor wife gets tired of calling the window company out to keep on replacing the hinges on the windows.
I was going to say, if you could see Scott's house, Ruthie, she runs a pretty tight ship. You know what I mean? It's not a man cave, right? Ruthie's got it looking really pretty. It's really elegant. And then you could just see Scott in there opening the window, shooting the bow. Yeah. I bet she just loves that.
She every morning,
that's so funny.
I sit out there and I drink my coffee, listen to the birds, and I just wait for that sun to peak up so I can sneak inside and shoot my arrows every morning, because I can usually shoot 2 cycles of 10 every morning. And then I go down and pull them, and I can go get a shower and I get ready to go to work. And, and it's just I do a little bit in the evening, but I just, I'm eating up with it, and so, I mean, and it's quiet. When I shoot guns, it's noisy. I enjoy shooting, but it's just it's sort of like when you shoot that bow, it's just like you have to be so focused to try to do it well, because I'm not naturally a great shot. And so, I mean, it's something I have to really work on. And, it's something I just really love doing. But as for the bows, I mean, I'm sitting here in my room, and
it's not about which one. It's about how many. He's got. Scott could probably be like a compound bow collector.
Everybody's. I like new technology, right? So I'm kind of geeky, and so when new ones come out and intrigue me, I have a tendency of kind of getting them, and that's my only thing. I'm not a big golfer and that stuff. I'm a bow dude, and so I don't know what I'm doing. I got a new Matthews, a new Elite, and so I mean I just got to shoot them and find out which one I feel the most comfortable with. It kind of alternates a little bit back and forth.
It honestly feels like you're trying to pick one out of the best, or you're trying to pick. I mean, they're all awesome, right? Like it doesn't matter if it's an Elite bow, a Hoyt bow, a Matthews bow.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, it's insane what these bows can do nowadays. It's like you're just trying to pick the better of the best. Yeah. I mean, it's just like it's crazy. Yep. Yeah, it's crazy how good they are.
Yeah. They all, every year it seems like they shoot just a little bit differently, but it's just, and it's also, I'm not getting any younger, so it's not easy to pull the weight back. It's a little bit challenging every year, but but it's a lot of fun. I don't know what I'm going to shoot.
Yeah, we get pretty lucky. I mean, he talks about shooting in the morning. That's what's nice about here in Mesa City, where our office is. We've got an outdoor range on the north end of town.
Yeah.
So that ends up being the lunch break stop. Run to the gas station on the way, grab a little something, then drive out there, shoot about 1 or 2 rounds, and drive back.
Yep.
So that works out pretty good. It's a 60-yard range, and I can get it out to, if you get just in the right spot, 100, but usually 60 to 80 is pretty nice to be able to shoot far. So, it's kind of fun.
No, it is a lot of fun. I do enjoy it immensely, and it's fun when Buddy comes on down, because we always get out and shoot a little bit, and so it's kind of fun. It's sort of like discussions. Maybe it's what golfers feel when they're out golfing. It's just easier to talk a little bit sometimes when you're out golfing. It's real easy to talk when you're just shooting, and pulling arrows and doing that kind of stuff. So it's I love everything about archery.
Yeah, we actually just had a pretty cool experience last weekend. So we went up to, and Scott, I think you know this archer club, A1 Archery. I think I used to be owned by Paul Korn, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So we went up to A1 Archery, and we got our bows all set up, and and there's a camaraderie when you're out hunting and you get to be with your friends and your family, and there's a camaraderie when it comes to shooting. Yeah. Not only just the camaraderie, but you can, if you sprinkle a little bit of pressure on there, a little bit of bet here and there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yep. Drop a couple bucks on the ground and see who gets to pick it up, whoever's closest. that can help you when you're drawn back on something. So I think that's kind of fun.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. But
well, thanks. Well,
so I'm proud of you guys.
Dude, thanks Scott for being on. I really appreciate it. And I hope, honestly, I hope that we can do this more. You know, I think that's, and Scott and I were talking about this before we got on here today. I feel like this podcast is a really great opportunity for people that are listening and are watching to not only just hopefully learn something, you know, about hunting, learn something about Ozonics, but I really feel like it's a great way for them to learn something about who we are.
Yeah.
You know, because I'll tell you what, as awesome as Ozonics are and how much they work, the people that make up this company are, you know, even better. Yeah. You know, so that's what I just think is really, really cool. And that's, I think, the idea behind this. So thank you, Scott, for being on. I really appreciate you taking the time today, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Well, I look forward to it. Nick, we're glad to have you involved and stuff. I hear great things about you. So it's good to see your face. And I've enjoyed, you know, some of your stuff that I've seen on Instagram and some of the previous podcasts and what you guys are doing. And so, and I think that tying in the future, the hunts that you guys are doing or whatever we're planning on doing into your podcast, it's just kind of a unique approach to be able to tie some of our experiences in the field within the podcast. I think, like you did on your turkey ones. Yeah, I just, it's a new concept, right? So it's not a TV program; it's an actual opportunity to kind of share with end users what hunting's all about, not just Ozonics, but what the hunting experience is all about.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the thing too is to be able to share in the camaraderie. I mean, we're gonna be in Idaho elk hunting, we're gonna be in Montana. Yeah, you're gonna be down with Scott and Buddy down nilgai hunting on the King Ranch, which is going to be an amazing experience. Yep. And so I just think, again, I think it's just a great way that we can just share in those experiences and just share in the adventures and the camaraderie of the hunt. I think it's gonna be really, really fun.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, the nilgai thing, you're going to find it be very intriguing. The very first time I went down there nilgai hunting, I didn't take it as seriously as I should have, right? You know, Buddy really wanted to go do it, so I didn't even pack any camel clothes, really.
This is funny.
I brought black shorts, some athletic socks, everything I got into a small duffel bag.
Which is actually, that is a whole thing for Scott too, because he usually travels with like a Suburban that's like loaded to the till. So for him to pack light,
I pack and use about 3% of what I brought. And so we went down there to the King Ranch hunting these nilgai. And I'd heard of them before, but I'm like, who wants to go shoot a gigantic, you know, exotic animal? It's really not my thing, right? Oh my gosh, I'm telling you, it's consuming, right? Because they're about the size of they're pretty close to an elk.
Yeah, they're like bigger than a deer, about the size of an elk, from what I've heard. Yeah.
No, I'd say a big one's like 600 and some pounds. Crazy. You know, yeah, and they're just smooth as silk when they walk, and they're just very. When they told us we were hunting them with the bow and arrow, they laughed at us initially because everybody hunts them with a rifle.
They're so skitty.
Really?
They're so skitty. They are, dude. That's the thing about them. They are skitty.
You just wait, they're massive, and so I'm really looking forward to that hunt down there. I think, and it's a beautiful place. You're going to see more 150s to 200 class deer than you've ever seen in your entire life, free ranging, and they're like mosquitoes. I mean, you're driving in and out of this place, there's deer all over the place, and it's free ranging. There's no high fence.
I've heard that about the King Ranch area from before even just Scott talking about that. Yeah, that area, it is like trophy caliber everything.
Well, that fires me up.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you. It's funny because a lot of the Midwestern guys don't know much about nilgai hunting, right? Even when I told you,
I had no idea.
Yeah, like when Scott and Buddy were going last year, I was like at my mother-in-law and father-in-law's, and I said, "Yeah, Scott and Buddy are going nilgai hunting," and I literally had to pull it up on my phone and just kind of explain to him what it was. A lot of Southern, Scott always jokes that we're from the North, like it's on Game of Thrones or something. But if you're from Texas, you know what a nilgai is. Yeah. They know what nilgai are, and guys get super serious about that. Yeah. And I feel like the King Ranch is kind of the top of the mountain when it comes to
No,
opportunity.
it's a pinnacle.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, the accommodations are just next level on top of it as well. It's just an unbelievable place from the way it sounds.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. And you know, the table fare is this, right? So, I mean, I love, you know, we raise our own beef, but we don't really buy any meat. So we live on elk and axis and, you know, nilgai. And first time I ever made a nilgai tenderloin, I went ahead and kind of seared it, put it in the oven, put it out, just some butter, cooked it in a little bit of avocado oil to sear it, brought it out, put a little bit of butter on it, salt and pepper, put it on the cutting board. And I mixed up this kind of like sauce to dip it in. But I'm like, you know what? I just want to try it with nothing. Just salt and pepper. It was the most beautiful piece of meat I've ever eaten in my entire life. Bar beef, anything else. It is off the hook.
Crazy.
Wow.
So tender. And just the flavor of it is so, I wasn't ready for it, right? And so we've basically, you know how sometimes you'll shoot something and some of it will kind of linger in your freezer? It's wiped out. It's gone. Right?
None left.
And so it's a beautiful treat. And so, you know, hopefully, you know, going into next year or whatever, we can schedule. And, you know, I told Buddy I like to do it. I'd say elk hunting for me right now is here. And nilgai hunting right now is a close second.
Nice.
Right? Because it is really challenging, and they are just so phenomenal eating, and they are so challenging. I mean, you will find that out, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like we were just saying, like, you know, it's trying something new. Obviously, I've never been on a nilgai hunt, so I'm really excited to go on. It's going to be super cool.
I think it'll be really cool for you from a video perspective.
Yeah,
too.
without a doubt.
Having not been ever doing something like that, you'll have a really good perspective.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the first time, you know, they put me up in like a 12-foot ladder stand over this water hole deal, kind of sunken back a little bit. And, you know, I screwed in the Ozonics unit and just kind of laid back, put my feet up, and I was just chilling. And the first time that one came out of there, that, you know, it was a pretty big bull, but the horns aren't really that big, right? But I felt like I could step off my stand and get right on his back. It was that tall. They're really long, like a moose, real long-legged, you know? And I was like, what the heck did I get into? Right? And so I'm like, this is a charge. So, yeah, it's going to be a neat experience. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys appreciate it. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. All right, guys. So that's a wrap. Episode number 9. Thanks for watching. I'm Cole Tanner.
I'm Nick Simon.
We got Scott, Elrod. Thanks, Scott, for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,